Hi, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to go over some inline elements, specifically elements you might use within paragraphs of text or as an alternative to paragraphs of text, often to style text and to describe the kind of text that you're using. So just make sure we're clear on a really quick definition, inline elements. So I'm just going to type a little paragraph here. Let me give myself a little room to work. Oh, by the way, I do have a HTML5 blank page here. I've got the doc type definition, head section with title element, character encoding meta, my author meta, and then in the body section I have a headline. And in this paragraph I'm going to kind of, there are two broad categories of elements, okay? Block and inline. And I've mentioned block elements before. Headline 1 is a block element. Paragraph is a block element, and block elements separate themselves from surrounding text with a line space, and even though they may not look like it, they do take up the full width of the screen. So I have two block elements in my page right now, headline 1 and paragraph, and this is how my page looks. Notice that my headline 1 is on a line by itself and my paragraph is on a line by itself. Even if I did this, my paragraph is right next to my headline 1. If I save this, browser, refresh, it doesn't change in the display on my browser. That's a behavior of block elements. Let me show you one other quick behavior. I'm going to put in some internal styles here. Okay, and I'm going to do something kind of weird, I suppose. I'll do H1 and P. Okay, this is called a grouped selector. More on CSS in another video, but this is when you want to format two elements in the exact same way. And I'm going to put a border 2 pix solid red. So basically I'm going to put a red border around my headline 1s and my paragraphs. When I've saved this and refresh, you'll really now see that block elements take up the full width of our browser, or they'll take up as much width as they can. And if I narrow my browser, you'll see that, yeah, those will also get narrower. Okay? So that's one of the behaviors of block elements also. They take up the full width available to them. Size that back out. And they separate themselves from surrounding content. Now let's compare this with an inline element. So I'm going to jump down to my paragraph. And an inline element should be inside of a block element. Okay? And I'll start off with a very common one. I'm going to put this on a separate line here. Oops. There are two categories of elements, block and inline. Around the word block, I'm going to put a set of bold tags. And around the word inline, I'm going to put a set of italicizing tags, or italics. Okay, so these are two very old-fashioned common inline elements, also called phrase elements, also called logical style elements, and they style text within the line. And you should be able to tell pretty easily what they're going to do. Bold and inline, B and I. So when I look at my page now and refresh, you can see I've got bold text and italicized text. Now these are old, and there's a lot of web developers that say, you know, you should kind of phase out your use of bold and in italics, and instead use strong and emphasis. Strong and emphasis are also inline elements, and they do pretty much the same thing. If I save this, browser refresh, I still have bold and italics. Strong by default will bold text usually, and emphasis by default will italicize text usually. But this is considered more semantic, and it's describing kind of the importance of the purpose of the value of the text in question. So emphasis by default does italicize things, but it doesn't mean that's what it has to do. For instance, I could decide with my styles that emphasis will be blue text, font style normal, and let's see, what else can I do? How about font size 110%. There we go. Maybe I've decided that my emphasized text should be blue not italicized, and a little bit bigger. Okay, so using emphasis kind of makes it more open for change, for different ways that you want to emphasize text. Whereas if you use italicize or the italics tag, it kind of indicates that is italics. And whenever you can take specific style instruction out of your web page, it tends to be a good thing. If you've made web pages a long time ago, you might be familiar with the old font tag. It's like nobody uses the font tag anymore because it's too specific on that page. You want options. You want to be able to change depending on the needs. So those are two really common inline elements, and ones you're more likely to use. Now let's see. There's a number of other inline elements, but I can't really say they're really too common. For instance, let me go ahead and create another paragraph here just so we've got something to work with. Alright, so I've got another paragraph of text, and although it's not the most realistic example, you can do SUP for superscript. There we go, and I can also do SUB for subscript. Does exactly what you think, superscript and subscript text. I don't really use those too often. What about another paragraph here, and we can also do KBD. What do you think that one will do? Let's find out. Here you go. It's kind of hard to tell, but that's keyboard text or typewriter text. Basically, it's a fixed width font. So why would you do something like that? Well, if you're putting in a code sample, you might do something like that. So there's a number of various elements. There's a cite, code, definition, keyboard, mark, samp for sample text and things like that. There's a number of different inline elements, and it's rare that you would really use some of these by themselves. They're really going to be used often in conjunction with your CSS, your styles. Now, before I finish off this video, I do want to go over a couple very common inline elements. So these are basically text style inline elements. But let's try, what about this one? Of course, paragraph is a block element. We know that now. Really common inline element that you've already seen. There we go, an image. An image is an inline element, and probably one you're going to use a lot. So images are inline elements. They go inside of block elements. Very, very common. And images, inline images are kind of like text. Kind of like if you're using Word and you insert an image, it goes in line with the text. So that's a really common element. What else is common? Anchor tags. Okay. Anchor tags are inline elements, okay? So anchor tags are inline elements, and they go inside of block elements too. Now you'll notice that I can have one inline element, in this case my image, inside of another inline element, in this case my anchor. Perfectly legitimate. Inline elements can be in other inline elements. Inline elements need to be inside of a block element, but you can't go the other way around, okay? So for instance, I wouldn't have my anchor tags outside of my paragraph, okay? That would not work for me. That would be invalid, okay? So inline has to go inside of the block, not the other way around. So let me just undo all of that. So now I'm in better shape. So there's a little bit for inline elements. And if you're running through the validator, you'll of course find out if you ever make a mistake and things like that. And I just wanted to show you over here on, where are we at? Let's see. Over on Wikipedia, they have a list of inline elements and phrase elements. Phrase elements are like inline elements. Abbreviation, don't use that one too much, but you can use the title in there to give the full information if you're using an abbreviation in your page. See, acronym, definition, there's emphasis, strong. Code, sample, keyboard, variable. If you're literally putting in code samples or JavaScript samples or something like that in your page, that might come in handy. Bold and italics, might start to try to phase some of those out. There's big and small tags. Don't use those too much. Generally, if you want to make something big or small, it's going to be inside of a paragraph text-wise, and you might give that paragraph a unique ID or a class and just use styles to format that. Notice that they have strike. That's deprecated, means phased out. You won't use it again. Typewriter text there, you know, whenever that situation is necessary. Underline has been deprecated for a long time. You shouldn't underline text. Underline text generally indicates that it's a hyperlink, and so you don't want to underline things that aren't hyperlinks. Don't use font tags anymore. Those are old-fashioned. Span we'll use a lot more later on. Span is kind of like the inline version of div. And it comes in handy when you're getting a slightly fancier with web design and CSS. So you will see my use of span increase quite a bit. A bunch of other inline elements on here. Q for quote, that's kind of good. Script tags, if you're doing some JavaScript, is inline. Sub and superscript, we saw that one. So a bunch of different elements on there that you can start to experiment and have fun with making your web pages.